Hi, everyone. This is Nancy Brown from Seabrook Island Birders, and I want to welcome you to tonight's evening program via Zoom. I'm the treasurer and membership chair for this year. And I do want to mention we have one upcoming program. We hope for it to be our first in-person program held at the Lake House on Seabrook Island next month, March 22nd. It's a Tuesday night, and we'll be welcoming the Center for Birds of Prey with live demonstrations. So it's always exciting to have them come to our facilities and fly the birds around. So we hope to see many of you in person in about a month. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Bob Mercer. Bob is on our board of directors. He's also the co-lead for the activities committee, as well as the co-lead for our Shorebird Steward program on Seabrook Island. So Bob, you're unmuted. You can go ahead and take over.
Thank you, Nancy. Good evening, everybody. Appreciate your coming here today and spending a little bit of time with us. I think we're in for a very exciting program. This is a near and dear topic to my heart. I love birds. I've been birding for many years, and I love the migrants in particular. So I'm very much looking forward to this program. I do want to do a little bit of shameless advertising before we get started. As Nancy said, I'm also the co-chair of the Seabrook Island Shorebird Steward program, along with Mark Andrews, and Leslie Gore is also on our committee. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to hope that after you've listened to Felicia, that you're going to be so excited about the preservation of the shorebirds that you'll want to help us on Seabrook Island protect them. So as a Shorebird steward, they do 2-hour shifts on the beach, greeting people, talking to them about the birds that we see there. To become a steward, you just go through some training. We have training this Saturday, and you need to sign up for that. It would be great, but that's between us working with the Seabrook Island Shorebird stewards and South Carolina Audubon's making the presentation because we work with them on this. So that's this Saturday. To become a steward, you get trained at the session on Saturday. If you can't make that, that's okay. We're going to tape it like we're taping this one, and you'll be able to watch that at your leisure at your home. All you need to do is ask to become part of that. I'm going to share my screen real quick, and let's see if we can make this work. Didn't work. I don't know. Yeah, maybe it did. Okay. So what we're going to hope. Can you all see this slide? Can anybody see the slide?
Yeah, you can see it, Bob. That's great.
Okay. Just want to make sure it's working. So we want you to join the crowd of people on the beach and the birds on the beach, the red knots like we have here, and to become a Seabrook Island Shorebird steward. And there's a way to do it. You log in to become a volunteer. And the login process seems a little convoluted, but when I explain to you why, you'll understand it. What we need you to do is you need to send a request to sibsteward@gmail.com. We will put that into the chat later on today so that you'll be able to get that. Once you send that request, Leslie will then send you a limited access webpage link, and that you will fill out a form that you would set up your own password, and then you will be able to get in and do the calendars and stuff like that. The reason we do that is when we first started this several years ago, we didn't put this step in. And within a week, we were excited to see 600 or more people signed up to be stewards. When we got around to it, we found that there was a bunch of them that were just bots. There was some porn sites. There was all sorts of things that we didn't want. And there was all of, I think, 6 or 12, maybe 20 people out of that 600. And we had to physically go through and delete all those people. So what we did was we set up this process where you need to request the form that'll give you access. Then once you have access, what you would do, or if you also another way to do that is to go to the SIB page, and you can click over here where I want more information on becoming a steward. under the Shorebird Steward page. And then once you do that, you'll be able to get on calendars and things like that. So that's all I wanted to share with on my screen. So I'm going to get back out of that so you can't see that. So what I want to do now is I want to introduce Felicia Sanders. The program she's going to do tonight is Hemispheric Flights of Migratory Shorebirds. Felicia has been working for 30 years in conserving birds, and not just shorebirds, but all sorts of birds. She's joined the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources in 2001 and leads the South Carolina Shorebird Project. Her primary task is promoting conservation of important sites for nesting and migrating coastal birds, surveying seabirds and shorebirds. One of those important sites, obviously, is Seabrook Island because it is a magnet for a lot of birds. She also partners with universities to research life histories and is a co-author of a number of publications. Has traveled to the Arctic 5 times because a lot of these birds will end up in the Arctic. She's gone there 5 times to participate in research projects. She's a graduate of Clemson University, a major in biology. Last year, we were all proud of her. I'm probably not as proud as she was, but we were all excited to see that she was awarded the Biologist of the Year by the Southeastern Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. And she was recognized by the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. Very well deserved. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Felicia and hope you all enjoy the program.
Thank you. Let's see. All right. Did that work? Am I sharing the screen?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. All right. Yeah, thank everybody for spending your evening with me and this group learning about migratory shorebirds. And this was partly inspired by Betty. I'm glad to see she's in attendance. You see a lot of birds on the beaches at Seabrook and Kiowa, and we've talked a lot about red knots, but there are many other species on the beach. And she kept asking me, well, where do those go? So I've kind of put this talk together. I haven't given one quite like this before, but it was fun looking at all the projects I've been involved with, researching where some of these other species other than red knots go. So hopefully you'll find this interesting. So birds are always on the move. They're migrating from northern nesting areas to southern wintering areas. Kind of the definition of migration is regular, seasonal, predictable movement. And every spring we see birds coming through going north, and in the fall headed south. It's all driven by food availability. When it gets cold, there's less food. So they move to more warmer places where there's more food, and vice versa. And scientists have used a lot of different techniques to figure out where birds go. Even thousands of years ago, we have records of birds being marked, that bands with serial numbers on birds. There's also auxiliary markers, which are the color bands that could be on a wing, a neck, and mostly we'll see them on legs to identify unique individuals. To understand migration, we really need to mark hundreds, if not thousands of birds with these kind of markers. And this also requires people like this group to re-see them, re-find them, and report them on the website. So we'll understand where these birds went. Just in your backyard is SCDNR owned and managed Deposed Bank, and we've done a lot of research there. So I thought I'd try to focus on some projects that we've done very close to where you live. You kind of know perhaps that Deposed Bank has thousands of pelicans nesting on it. Also has a lot of other species such as these royal and sandwich terns. The royals are mixed with the sandwich terns. The royals have the orange bill, and the smaller ones, these are both crested terns, have a black bill. You can see them in the picture. They actually have a little bit of a yellow tip to their bill. Easy to remember, just think sandwich, mustard, and you can remember this other species. And each of these nests is a single egg. So this is a picture of a colony of a sandwich and royal tern nesting colony on DeVoe Bank. And when all those eggs hatch, all the chicks move to the beach in creches. So you have a lot of young chicks running around the beach. Parents are feeding them and they can't fly. And we've continued a project that's been nets or seines and corralled the chicks on early cool mornings, not to stress them out, and put a single metal band on these birds. And then this is the kind of thing we've learned. So you see, I know you see a lot of royal terns on your beaches in the summer, thanks to Ed for this photo I found on your website. And through people reporting these banded royal terns, we found that ours that are born in South Carolina primarily spend the winter in Florida, but also go as south as Peru, as far east as Guyana in South America, west to Mexico. So royal terns become a much more interesting species when you know that they're traveling even as far south as Peru every winter. Another bird that's common on your beaches is American oyster catcher. One of my favorites, and a lot of people know Janet, she did her master's work on the spring and lay 3 eggs in them. And for oyster catchers, we not only put metal bands on them, but also a color band. Each state has their own unique color. So if you see an oyster catcher with a blue color band on its leg, you know that it was banded by the South Carolina crew. Green, North Carolina, and I think you have one from Georgia on your beach at Seabrook. So you know red equals Georgia. And through this color banding and then people like you reporting it, we know the birds that nest on our beaches in South Carolina, they don't migrate. They mostly just stay in the area that they nest. They may go to the next island to feed on oysters or clams, but mostly they're not going too far. And then in the winter, we have a lot more oyster catchers. We have some pretty big flocks. And we know through color banding that birds from all the states north of us on the Atlantic coast will come to South Carolina for the winter. So it's a beautiful rainbow pattern when you look through a flock on one of the shell rakes around here, and you'll see orange and yellow from Massachusetts. You'll see some green colors from North Carolina, and really all the colors north of us end up here. So if you're interested in kind of helping out with this project by reporting color banded oyster catchers, or just even learning more about where oyster catchers move, we have a great website, AMOI WG, or American Oyster Catcher Working Group. I encourage you to take a look at that. But one really interesting thing that's been recently discovered through color banding, and I know Janet and folks at Seabrook just color marked and tagged some juvenile oyster catchers this just last summer, is that the immature ones kind of disappear for a couple years. They come back 3 to 4 years later when they're ready to nest, but we don't really know where they go. So our nesting ones appear every year, and then their young just disappear. And we've recently found out that some of them are going all the way to Central America. Just really surprising to researchers that thought oyster catchers did not migrate very far. So at the intersection of Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Honduras, they've seen a lot of immature oyster catchers banded on the East Coast. We've also seen some banded in South Carolina end up in Florida, and some recent ones that were banded in North Carolina, they're in Mexico. And then once they get old enough to nest, 3 to 4 years, like I said, they're mature, they head back to the United States. So a lot more complicated than we ever thought even 5 years ago. There's another system of marking birds that we are using, and you may have heard about it. It's the MODIS wildlife tracking system here and projects that we've been involved with, and partly with your help. It's a collaborative research network. It's organized by the government in Canada, the Wildlife Agency, and it's a series of towers that are picking up, or they have receivers picking up signals from very small radios that can be put on all kind of flying organisms, birds, bats, large insects. You might have heard about even monarch butterflies can be tagged, and then these towers pick up their signal and we understand their migration. So on our beaches right now, we have flocks of small wintering shorebirds, and these pictures were taken up in Cape Remain National Wildlife Refuge. And they consist of mostly small birds that tag or a nanotag to understand migration. Here's a Dunlin. These are the most common shorebird, most numerous shorebird in the winter on our beaches in South Carolina. And we've worked with Trent University in Canada to better understand their migration. We have captured them up in Cape Remain near where I live, put color bands on them. You can see the bottom one has a green flag. It's a green color band with a unique identifier. And then top left is one of the nano tags that the MODIS tower system is picking up so that we can better understand their migration. I love Dunlin. You can kind of see them poking their bills in the sand on the surface. The tip of their bill is very sensitive, so they pick up food by just seeing it, but also as they probe in the sand, the bill feels invertebrates and they can find food that way. And so again, most common shorebird on our beaches in the winter, and actually fall and spring. They really stay here most of the year. But if you see this map on the left, the orange is where they nest. So a lot of people don't know that. Those big flocks of shorebirds we see on the beaches in the winter, they're going all the way up to the Arctic to nest each year. So this pink is their nesting area. It's on the Arctic Ocean, the coast of Alaska, and the west side of Hudson Bay, where the cold winds off Hudson Bay create tundra on the edges. You can see they're kind of confusing, really pretty plain gray in the non-breeding season, which is the fall and the winter. But in the spring and just starting now, they get a really nice black patch on their belly and beautiful red and brown plumage on their backs. This is one of the shorebirds that actually is doing fairly well. The populations, they believe, are pretty stable. So good to know there is a shorebird that's doing okay, because most of them are declining. And I've been lucky enough, like Bob said, to go to the Arctic for a couple summers. And again, I picked this species to take a look at because I got to monitor some of their nests. So I was up in Churchill, right on the west side of Hudson Bay, and Dunlin nests in these big open grass flats. It's very wet. You have to wear hip waders. And the center picture, I don't know if you can see it, but it is of a Dunlin hiding, incubating its nest. And then everybody loves a chick picture. On the right is an egg with 2 chicks next to it, just hatched. Another one of the small shorebirds that are mixed in those flocks we'll see on the beach this time of year are Semipalmated Plovers. We've also been banding these in South Carolina and putting nano tags on them to better understand migration with Trent University in Canada. And we really connected with this program in Canada because Mary Catherine, who works with us, she saw a color banded Semipalmated plover on our beach and connected with the Arctic research team that was banding them on their nests and found out that indeed she had seen one of their birds. So really just this bird really connected us with folks researching Arctic nesting shorebirds. And again, here's a semi-palmated plover. This one is in breeding plumage, has a really dark black band when it gets in its breeding plumage and black around the eye. These are more visual foragers. They have big eyes, and just like piping plovers, which some of you are helping us understand, they just search for food and then they quickly run over and grab it, like this semi-palmated plover pulling a worm out of the sand to eat it. And also these birds nest in the Arctic a little more broad nesting habitat than the Dunlin. I was also near Churchill on the Hudson Bay, and they nest on the rocky shores of the coast. So this is a picture of the beach at Churchill. And this is us looking for semi-palmated plover nests on the left. So this is the kind of habitat they nest in. I took this picture on the right, June 29th. It's the beach of Hudson Bay. So this is the kind of habitat these birds are trying to nest in. Again, it really emphasizes the need to protect them and let them feed and become really healthy before they head up to their nesting grounds end of May, beginning of June, because this is the kind of habitat they're raising their young in. Very cold. And I didn't take this picture, but I saw a lot of semi-palmated plover nests and chicks, and they're just adorable. And the final one that is common in those large flocks that you'll see on the beach, the Sanderling. It is the one that you'll see kind of chasing the waves in pretty big flocks. On the right is the non-breeding plumage. So it's pretty gray, and notice that tiny black speck on the tip of its, or on its shoulder. That's a really indication that it's a Sanderling. They have black legs, black bill. And then on the left, in the spring, pretty soon, they're going to get this beautiful plumage before they head to the Arctic. Unfortunately, Sanderling really are not doing well. They're a very high conservation concern because they have been declining. They nest in the very high Arctic above Hudson Bay. So I've never been that high. So really, really small nesting habitat. You can see in the picture, it's just the orange pink area in the very tip of the Arctic in Canada. And shorebird surveys have shown in some recent decades, 14% decline every year. So this is one of the birds that's really in trouble, probably because of human disturbance on the beach. So if you join the Shorebird Steward program, there's a lot of birds that need our help, and a lot of birds just need to rest, especially late spring, to get to the Arctic and nest. Another type of marker or technique to follow and understand migration are geolocators. And we've put some geolocators on red knots at Seabrook. So some of you may be familiar with this. This is red knot legs in the photo, and behind the white band on this bird is a small geolocator. It's a small device that records light level and time, and you have to recapture the bird, download the data, and from that data we can find the location of the bird while it's been on the bird. So entire year of migration. Unfortunately, it's not that accurate. About 100-mile accuracy these geolocators give us. But for birds that are flying across the hemisphere, 100-mile accuracy is adequate to learn a lot. And a lot of people have seen this, but I just threw it up there. Here's one of the red knot geolocator maps that we got. We banded birds on Seabrook and just nearby on Deposed. We banded this bird on Deposed. and recaptured it. And we found out that it went up to the Arctic and then all the way down to the tip of South America, Tierra del Fuego. We got a couple years of migration route from this bird and then recaptured it at DeVoe. So really amazing small device that can tell us a lot. And we also put some geolocators on Willets. So I didn't think Willets were that interesting until we started working on them. And we have been working on them at DeVoe Bank, again, right off the Seabrook tip. These are pictures of eastern willets. There's a western willet, which nest in the western states and come here in the winter. And strangely enough, the eastern willet disappears in the winter. So the eastern willet is very distinctive. When it flies, it has this dark white and dark brown band. They're kind of drab in the winter, just plain gray, but in the summer when they're nesting, spring and summer, just beautiful browns, gray, and black back. And they're probably the most abundant nesting shorebird in South Carolina. They mostly feed by themselves on our beaches. They eat crabs, crustaceans, small mollusks, even sometimes fish. You'll see them on the mud flats and in the oyster beds feeding. And in the grass, especially in the dunes, they lay their eggs, usually 4 eggs. Most shorebirds lay 3 to 4 eggs, and they nest in April through June. So as I was saying, we caught some willets on DeVoe Bank. Top left picture is the white band with that small geolocator attached to it. They nest, like I said, in the grass, in the dunes. And so we found a nest and we slowly put this netting over it. And then the bird flushed and it got caught in the netting. And so we were able to capture it and put the geolocator on it. And this is what we found out. So again, I actually did not know Willet did a migration like this until we started researching them. So we caught it on a nest at DeVoe Bank. And then July 20th, it went to Guyana. July 28th, it went to French Guiana and spent the entire time until March 20th, the next year, when it flew to Florida. So most of the year it's spent in French Guiana, then Florida, then March 26th to South Carolina, and then back nesting on DeVoe Bank. And we caught it the next year, May 10th, downloaded the data, and that's how we know this. So really interesting. Our willets that are pretty common on our beach in the spring are headed to South America every winter. And this is, again, where our willet at DeVoe Bank spent the winter in French Guiana. And another researcher that's working on willet in New Jersey took this picture of where their willet are wintering. So they're on the coast in South America for the winter, in the mangroves and the mud flats. Another bird that is very common on our beaches is the brown pelican. Everybody loves pelicans. And at DeVoe, they nest in thousands and thousands. Here's top left, a picture of a pelican colony. They lay big white eggs. When their chicks are born, they don't have feathers, so they kind of look like dinosaurs. And then when the chicks are a little older, they're white and just beautiful, this bottom left picture. So we have large colonies of nesting brown pelicans in South Carolina. So again, trying to figure out, well, where do they go the rest of the year? Clemson University partnered with us to tag pelicans and to put satellite transmitters on them. So not only did they put color bands on the legs, so you may actually see the PhD researcher, Bradley Wilkinson, he caught a lot of them at DeVoe Bank. So love to hear any reports of color banded pelicans you see. I just did include the website. If you see a banded pelican, they have large color bands on their legs. You can go to this website and report it and find out where it was banded. And then also he put these satellite transmitters on pelicans. On the left are a bunch of them lined up. They have a small solar, well, actually a pretty large solar panel. That's what powers them. So they have to be in the sun to power. And they have an antenna that communicates with GPS, satellite, and also a communication system that can just report locations back to our computers. And so this is what he found. And we have also, through band resighting, we found that our pelicans that nest in South Carolina primarily winter in Florida and Cuba. So really interesting species. Both the satellite tagging found that birds went to Cuba and partly to Mexico. And then the band resighting or band reporting also had a lot of reports from Florida and Cuba. So some of our pelicans spend the entire winter here, but a lot of them head south, not as far as some of the shorebirds, but pretty interesting that they go to Mexico and Cuba for the winter and then head back up for our nesting season. And then I know a lot of people wanted to hear about Whimbrels, so I thought kind of the last species I'd focus on are Whimbrel. Again, I was lucky enough to go up to the Arctic to Churchill, and that's the coastal town right on the west side of Hudson Bay, really known for polar bears. So you realize you're really far north. And here I met Andy Johnson. He's a brilliant ornithologist. And at the time when I met him, he was just in high school doing a summer project on Whimbrel. And he was catching Whimbrel by putting this Whimbrel goes back on the eggs. You pull a plug or pull a pin, and the spring trap goes over the bird. And this is a Whimbrel, has a stout down curved bill. It's a kind of curlew. And he was placing, again, a marker, this white flag. It says JM. Each one has a unique ID on it. And on the back was a geolocator. You can see in the little inset picture, a tiny device glued on the back. And from that geolocator, he found that all the birds that are there, well, most of the birds are wintering on the northern tip of South America. And then they're stopping in two places in the spring, Georgia, South Carolina, and also the Chesapeake. And then in the red is the nesting areas, again, up in the Hudson Bay area and the coast, Alaska and Western Canada. And so zooming in, as you know, if you remember, those geolocators are not that accurate. So he found they're stopping somewhere in the spring for about a month and a half. So they're in South America for 6 or 7 months. And then in the spring, they stop and fatten up, ready for their big trip to the Arctic to nest somewhere in South Carolina and Georgia. And also another important stop was in the Chesapeake Bay. Oops, sorry. Well, at the same time, our team's working on DeVoe, counting pelican nests, working on royal terns, mostly in the day, but we started having a few projects in the evening, and we noticed thousands of Whimbrel coming to DeVoe Bank for the night. So they come into the island just right after dark and often leave right before the first light. So definitely hard to see. Just on occasional full moon nights, you can really observe these thousands and thousands of birds coming to the island. The population estimate for the North American Whimbrel or Hudsonian Whimbrel is only 80,000. So seeing thousands coming to DeVoe really was almost unbelievable. It's a really important project that we started pursuing because Whimbrel are really declining. Surveys in the Chesapeake area have shown that they're declining over 4% every single year, or about 2/3 decline in the last 25 years. So I called a couple people, really the leaders in shorebird conservation in North America, that perhaps we had discovered this big nocturnal roost of Whimbrel at DeVoe Bank. And because they're so rare, like most people probably have only seen a couple in South Carolina. And the population's so low, so how could thousands be, on Devoe Bank? Not many people believed me. So I called my old buddy Andy up, and he's now a producer at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology in the media section. And I told him, I think we have discovered something fantastic. I think we've discovered where your Whimbrel geolocator work identified when you were in high school. I think we found that spring stopover site. So he came to South Carolina to video this phenomenon. And he brought with him Matt Aberhard, who's working for Cornell also. He's a world-leading wildlife photographer. He's worked with David Attenborough, Nature, Our Planet, just a fantastic videographer. But as I got to know him, I also found out he's just a really caring person. He loves wildlife and really cares about not disturbing them. So for 1 month in April, Andy and Matt got into a blind every late after the next morning. One, so they wouldn't disturb the birds, so they get really good footage of this incredible discovery of thousands of Whimbrel at Devoe, but also so they would not disturb them. They're very skittish. So here's Matt digging a hole for his evening evening place to lay down and try to get a great shot. He's getting ready for just where he's going to put the camera. And then we either buried him or covered him up, or he got into a blind, like I said. And this is the footage he got. So this is not just on a loop. This is just one flock of Whimbrel leaving Devoe Bank in the morning a couple springs ago. So really, really just amazing in our backyard is this incredible concentration of really a rare shorebird that's in decline. Yeah, still am amazed every time I see it. Still birds leaving. It really takes quite a while for all of them to leave. There are so many. So at the same time, we had a few crews go out to Devoe and actually just try to count how many Whimbrel are spending the night. We had about 4 different groups or people positioned all over the island. And just like the videographers, if we were going to disturb the birds to walk back to the boat in the evening, we wouldn't do it, and we would just spend the night there, really not moving until the next morning, until all the birds left. And especially on a full moon, you can see these birds because about 1/3 of them come in after official civil twilight or dark. So we counted about 20,000 Whimbrel in one night, spending the night on Devoe. This is really just incredible discovery and really important for the species, because that's half the eastern population of Whimbrel, which is estimated to be 40,000, and 1/4 of the entire North American population of 80,000. So real conservation importance right here at Devoe Bank. And so because of this discovery, we partnered with University of South Carolina researchers. Maina Handmaker is a PhD graduate student, and she's looking at where Whimbrel go every day in the spring when they're spending the night at Devoe. We know they kind of span out over the grass flats behind Seabrook, and then even farther south. They mostly eat fiddler crabs. This is a great footage that Matt got of a Whimbrel. It kind of slowly clips off the claws and then swallows the body of the fiddler crab. And so the last 2 springs, we've captured Whimbrel and put on this pinpoint GPS tag. It's really similar to the satellite tag. It has a solar panel and 2 antenna. One's talking to the satellites to get GPS readings, and the other one is talking to this tower that we're putting up at Devoe. So the tower has a receiver, and at the very bottom is a tote weighed it down with a sandbag, and it is downloading all the data from the tags that are on the Whimbrel. So we're expecting all the Whimbrel to come back to the same site, to DeVoe, to download 1 year's worth of migration data. Really excited. We've put out 12 tags so far, and really excited for this next spring when hopefully all those birds will return and we'll know where they went for the last year. She has got some data back already. And again, they're spending the night at DeVoe and then kind of spanning out. Each different color is a different bird. Some are just going behind Seabrook, some are going up the North Edisto River. And then we even had a few go all the way to Beaufort. So that's about 30 miles there, and then 30 miles back in the evening, 60 miles every single day just to spend the night at DeVoe. They're probably spending the night at DeVoe because the same reason pelicans are nesting there is surrounded by water, very few mammalian predators, and also just maybe a lot of social interaction is occurring when a lot of birds spend the night together. Her tracking project is also discovering new breeding sites. Like I said, Whimbrel nest in the Arctic, they winter in South America. So she's discovered some sites in the Arctic that a few of our birds have nested that nobody knew was a Whimbrel nesting site. So there's been a lot of media coverage about this one project. I just was gonna mention them because if you want to learn more about Whimbrel migration, about the work we're doing, you can actually look up a few articles. We also were covered in the CBS Sunday morning television show, which this show included some of her tracking data, so you can see where they're going in the breeding season and in South Carolina during the day while they're spending the night at DeVoe. Also, we have a Squarespace website. It's discovery at DeVoe, squarespace.com, where you can find out a lot of this information about this one project and where our Whimbrel are going every year. So I've kind of talked a lot about some of our research project, where some of our shorebirds and seabirds are going. But every project where you're handling a bird, banding a bird, it does disturb them. So this is really the most important slide of the entire talk, that all of this information leads back to adding partners to conservation efforts. Everybody needs to take this information and realize that these birds are in South Carolina, they're really just on a huge journey across the hemisphere. And while they're here, it's kind of our mission to protect them so they can make it to Canada, they can make it to Cuba, they can make it on their journey. And I think that's really worked. Since I've been here at DNR for a couple of decades, the partners continue to grow. The support for closing areas continues to grow. We have areas where dogs are not allowed so the birds can feed and rest. And I think just continuing to understand where these birds go, but also sharing it with everybody so they can be proud of our research, but also the journeys these birds are going on is really the most important message. So I hope I didn't cover too many species. I get excited about all the different work we're doing and just wanted to share that more than just red knots are on a huge journey from the beaches at Seabrook and Kiowa. And well, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Felicia. That was excellent. I learned a lot, which is saying a lot. I really do appreciate it. There was some questions. I know, Nancy, I think you were going to try to field some of these questions for us.
Yeah, so one question from Linda Rogoff. She's actually located in Portland, Maine. I forgot to mention, we've got people who signed up who are from Minnesota, Michigan, and Maine.
Wow.
I think those are the furthest away that signed up. Lots from South Carolina, but then all the Southeast. So we've got people who connect with Seabrook even for only a week who enjoy some of our programs. But Linda's wondering, she's a snowbird from Portland, Maine, and how can she get involved in a beach close to her home? I think she lives in Scarborough, actually. or near there. So do you have any suggestions, like maybe the Audubon, or do you have any
Yeah.
contacts in?
I don't have any contacts, but I would think Audubon societies, local chapters especially, would be a great start. And usually those kind of groups have wonderful websites. So I don't really have much to add. Sorry.
No, that's okay. And I know Maine has its own Maine Audubon. It's separate from the national. It's connected but separate, you know?
Yes.
So
Yes.
let's see. We have another question from Kathy Miller, and it's about the Whimbrels. And she's asking about the stopover location in the spring, specifically, why not North Carolina? I think I've captured what she's written. And if Kathy, you want to come on and be more specific, but Felicia, any thoughts about why not North Carolina?
Well, this so we believe that this concentration at DeVoe is the largest concentration of Whimbrel in the world. So that is one of the reasons Maina Handmaker at USC is working on Whimbrel. And one of the goals is to try to understand, why are they at DeVoe rather than North Carolina, or maybe some other, why not in Georgia? And it's probably a lot of reasons. It might be partly the vast salt marshes that we have in South Carolina where these birds can feed, especially as you go south. The salt marshes in South Carolina and Georgia are really wide, and the food availability is really, immense. Also, DeVoe is kind of unique. It is large enough that you can have large flocks of shorebirds that aren't disturbed by, pelicans or other nesting birds. We have a few seabird nesting sites, but they're really packed. Like every square inch has nesting pelicans, terns, especially pelicans. They're pretty clumsy, and they actually can disturb other birds as they wander around the island. So when I think about all the islands we have in South Carolina, DeVoe is really the only one that's large enough, but completely surrounded by water, so mammalian predators can't get these birds at night. That can kind of, host thousands and thousands of birds and give them room to just spread out and sleep and rest peacefully.
That's great. Thank you, Felicia. So just to follow up from Alyssa, back to Linda, there's a website listed. So Linda, if you're still on, you can go to the chat and get the website for the Maine Audubon volunteer site. And Kathy Miller, Felicia is asking, do we need to worry about DeVoe's future as a nesting site due to global warming and rising sea levels?
I think we probably need to worry about all coastal, lands. I'm not really an expert on that subject. I don't think we need to worry about DeVoe more than other places. It has a really a good sediment load coming down the North Edisto River to re-nourish it, where some other rivers that are channelized with rock or walls may not have that kind of source of re-nourishment. So DeVoe is pretty lucky in that it seems to constantly shift and even sometimes grow with all that sediment coming down the river. But I think we should be concerned about the entire system.
So if anyone else has a question, please feel free to add it to the chat. Bob or Leslie, any questions from either of you?
No questions for me. I just really did appreciate your taking the time to do this. It was excellent.
Oh, well, thanks.
Look forward to seeing you on the beach.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Felicia. I mean, this was a fabulous presentation. It's fascinating to see where our birds are going, especially learning that you all don't know really where they go until you have this technology. So
Yes.
special.
I do want to say one little thing is that, you know, was surprised that you've also banded, you know, the semi-palmated plovers and the Sanderlings and things like that, because in all the years last few years I've been here taking pictures, I've never seen a banded one. But I also want to caution people, Mark and I and Ed are out there with our long cameras taking pictures of bands and trying to feed this information so people like Felicia can understand where their birds are. But we do it very, very carefully. We do not disturb the birds. We try to approach them. We read their behaviors. We read their bodies and try to make sure that we're not disturbing them. One of the fears we have is if you go up and try to get a picture with your point and shoot, that you're just going to exacerbate the problem by disturbing them. So we're shooting with 400 to 600 millimeter lenses. We're standing pretty far away and trying to do these pictures without disturbing the birds. So encourage you to if you can get a good picture from a distance, do it. But if you can't get a good picture from a distance, don't try to sneak up onto them to get a better picture.
Thank you so much for adding that. Yes, number one, do not disturb the birds. Thank you.
Okay, Nancy's posted in the chat. If you want to become a Seabrook Island Shorebird steward, it's steward@gmail.com, and Leslie will send you a form. What we're looking for from stewards is we're looking for them to give 2-hour shifts. You can give one a year, or you can give one a week, or however many you want. And it's a real great opportunity for you to meet your neighbors on the beach and to help protect the birds that are visiting our beach. So we strongly encourage you to do it, and to consider joining us on Saturday morning for some training if you can. Once again, if you cannot, then we will have videotaped it so that you'll be able to watch it at your own time frame. So thank you once again.
And there's just 2 more quick questions, I think, Felicia, that we have time to answer, if it's okay. Alyssa was asking, how often are our conservation priority species reevaluated in the state?
Yeah, I think they're supposed to be done every 10 years, and I just got notification we're going to just start the process again. I think it's maybe been a little longer than 10 years, but about every decade.
Great. And then,
yes.
Then another question from Nancy Helm. Do you have thoughts about the impacts of rising temperatures in the Arctic on the nesting areas for these species? The Arctic summer temperatures are rising much faster than the temperatures in the rest of the world. So have you gotten any information from any of your friends up in the Arctic?
Yes. Again, I'm not an expert, but I've definitely read a lot of work that's being done. In fact, the group that invited me up to the Arctic has worked a lot on this. Dr. Erica down on the Hudson Bay for over 40 years. And when I was up there, she showed me sites that were great Whimbrel Dunlin nesting. It was just grassy, she said, when she was young, and now it has small trees. So that entire area is no longer a good shorebird nesting habitat. Shorebirds really like open areas, very few trees. Some species won't tolerate any trees at all. So definitely the vegetation is changing and really shrinking the amount of area that they can nest in some areas. Another big problem and area of study is kind of the mismatch of timing of insect abundance and chick growth. So the shorebirds migrate up to the Arctic, and like I showed the picture, it's very cold when they arrive. It can be snowy, and so they take all the energy from the southern areas. Let's say you're a Whimbrel, you get fat on the fiddler crabs in South Carolina, and you take that fat, and that's the energy to get to the Arctic, but it also may be the energy that actually produces eggs. So the fiddler crabs are producing Whimbrel eggs in the Arctic, but they've timed their arrival there. So when the chicks are growing, their chicks are growing and they need a lot of food. It's the exact same time that the insects are exploding. So the ice has melted, there's water everywhere, and then there are invertebrates in all the wetlands. And the warmer climate has caused that insect hatch to become a little bit earlier. And so the chicks are needing food, but they've kind of missed the peak invertebrate hatch. And so that mismatch may be causing lower reproductive success. I mean, birds are really, and animals are really adaptable. So maybe they are documenting that migration timing is changing as a result of this. So maybe they can catch up and time their arrival so that the chicks are needing the food at the same time it's really abundant. But that is one problem with the warming in the Arctic.
Great, thank you, Felicia. And it looks like there aren't any more questions. So I'll just again say thank you to you for being here tonight. Thanks to all of our members and guests who joined tonight's program. We will have the recording available in a couple days. So if you missed part of it, feel free to watch it again. Good night, everybody, and hope to see you at a future Birder program.